Hi, I'm Hanif Abdurraquib, and I'm going to talk about anxiety and how living with anxiety has affected my life and my work and the world I live in outside of my work. It's something I've been thinking about a lot lately because, like many people, like many of you watching this, and spending a lot of time in my home. And a primary function of how anxiety has showed up in my world is that it shrinks your environment, it shrinks your ecosystem. You are beholden to fewer things than you would be without it. Parts of the outside world feel terrifying, and you're kind of, moving from one set of fears to the next. And so right now, I think mental health is impacting a lot of people in a lot of ways. People who don't spend a lot of time at home normally, or people who do spend a lot of time at home but like having the option of not being at home. And what I've been seeing, at least in myself, is that I'm kind of pushing back against an over appreciation of stillness, which for me could mean that I often joke, as someone who travels a lot and moves through the world a lot, I often joke that if I could just stay at home for days and days and days on end, I would. And now that's my option, and that's my choice. Or now I don't have a choice. I'm kind of fighting against that by trying to engage with the world eagerly and generously. One way I've figured out how to do that in my work is by changing the definition of what I believe productivity is. So many of my anxieties early on as a writer were about if I was producing enough work, if I was writing enough. I'd heard all the writers say I needed to write every day, and that made me uncomfortable and made me feel as though I would never be a quote unquote real writer, which was a major anxiety of mine. And a thing I've often struggled with, and I think I tell young writers and tell writers of all ages and all stripes, is that for all the talk of how we need to be writing every day, no one ever talks about how to recover or how to feel good about yourselves in the days that you don't write. Because if you're tasked with writing every day, that to me means that on a day you don't write, you're not going to feel good about yourself. And then how are you going to get up to write the next day? And the day after that, and the day after that. And so it creates kind of a waterfall of not feeling good enough or feeling too anxious to create. And what I've begun to think about productivity or the act of writing as anything that makes a return to the page easier. And so for me, to push past my anxiety and to push past my concerns about not being a good enough writer, whatever that means, or not being a real writer, I have to go out in the world. I have to go on walks. I have to go to the movies. I have to now go look at the trees that are blooming in the spring out here in Ohio. I have to engage with the world, even through isolation, or even if my engagement with the world is just a walk through a park at a safe distance from other people. That to me feels like an act of writing because it makes me newly curious. It makes me newly excited about something that I perhaps didn't have excitement about before. It gives me new image, it gives me new metaphor, it gives me new language. And so even if I'm not putting words on the page, I am doing something that makes the act of putting words on the page easier, which for me is the most exciting part of what we do. And for me, it broadens my understanding of how to be an artist. It broadens my understanding of how to live generously and thoughtfully. And more importantly, it detangles me from this endless kind of hamster wheel of the anxiety of not feeling good enough or not feeling productive enough or not feeling creative enough. And it offers me something newer and better while also kind of calming the endless hum of noise in my head. And so, my hope is that we can all kind of reframe our ideas around productivity and reframe our ideas around work, and in doing so, be generous to ourselves as well. Thanks.